Good morning, good morning, good morning, good Sunday morning to each and every one of you, my father's children. You're tuned in to Sunday Morning Praise right here on WURD with your favorite church girl, the one, the only Kayla J. And as you know, family, we have been in this amazing series, Marriage, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And today, I have yet another amazing couple. This is a young couple and fairly still newly married. So please help me welcome to Sunday Morning Praise none other than my good friend Ray Gaddis and his wife Violiet. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kayla J. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
I am so excited to have you both here. Ecstatic. I'm over the moon for real. Like, there's not enough adjectives to explain how excited I am to have y'all both on today. Before I get started with all the interviews, I always like to do a wellness check with people because we live in such a chaotic world. So on a scale from 1 to 10, Violet, Ray, how are y'all feeling?
Ladies first.
I think I'm feeling pretty good. I'm up there. I'd say a 8 or 9.
Today, I feel it's definitely a 7 or 8. Just start my day. Leave room for what the score can go up to. So, a 7 and 8 for me as well. Keeping it real.
That's good. Always leave room for improvement. I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to get started. You're here today for the marriage series, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start real simple, y'all. Tell us your love story.
Well, the love story starts me inquiring about this young lady now who's my wife. I had a friend and I had a cousin who both knew her. And I asked them first about her, and then we're in a modern age. And at the time, I lived in Philadelphia. She lived in Indiana, but my family's from Indianapolis. So I did what most young people do. I friend requested her first to see what she was all about, try to get the, recon on her and see what was going on with her. And then I shot my shot, and that's how it started for me.
Deals.
Yeah.
Awesome. Violet, on your side, how did your love story work?
Yeah, so I always said I didn't want to meet someone on social media. So I was wanting to meet somebody, but that was the last place I was praying to meet someone, was hoping to meet someone. So um I feel like one day I just got it felt very random friend request. And I was like, who is this guy? I didn't know him. I know we had a lot of mutual friends. Um so I accepted him, and I didn't think anything about it. And then some weeks later, he eventually ended up writing me on Instagram, and I feel like it was just history from there. So I feel like it was kind of one of those, the place you least expect it, or the place you least expect to meet someone is the place it happens. It really caught me off by surprise.
The surprises are always amazing. Always. So when did you know you wanted to spend the rest of your life together? And I'll start with Violet this time.
Um, I don't know that it was like a defining moment. I feel like it was just he was consistent, and I liked that about him. He was very consistent. Um, he would always text, always call. He would always try to intentionally plan things. It was the consistency and the intentionality, and I hadn't experienced that with anyone prior. And so just thinking about what I wanted out of my future husband, that's really important. Someone who will pursue you in that phase will also continue that consistency as a husband as well. And then I also had this list. It wasn't a long list, but I had 5 things on that list, and he checked off each and every one of them. And so I kind of took that as a sign, like, okay, God, you've heard my prayer, you've heard my cry, and you've brought me somebody who's met all of these things, and then some. So I think it was a combination of that as well as his consistency.
Yeah, for me, I would say It actually was a game in Cincinnati. The weather was miserable. The climate was horrible. It was freezing, and she saved the whole entire game. She's not much of a sports person, but I was like, if she was willing to thug it out and willing to dupe it out under these circumstances and still have a smile on her face, I was like, you know what? She might be the one, but then just like praying and again, she touched on consistency. If anybody knows me, I'm a Bible based scripture person, and I started, I'm a pop quizzer. She don't like it too much. I'm like, so what's Psalm 1:1 saying? And she was showing me that the word was in her, and interesting enough, you know, the love of God called me to her, and I was like, that's when I really felt like those two incidences, this one game, and then just her love for God. It may seem cliche as there are a lot of podcasts out or a lot of shows saying, "Oh, this person loved God," but I genuinely say that.
Mm, that's very good. That's very good. A genuine love for God, I feel, is core and should be at the center of every relationship, every marriage. It really should be at the core of everything. Hold on, this, this my phone is ringing. I like that you said that y'all were you for you, Ray, that you was really making sure that she was in tune with God, because I feel that God should really be at the core of everything. He really should be at the center of every relationship, and definitely a marriage. So that's amazing. You kind of alluded to it. You said a game. So for those of you that do not know, Ray used to play here in Philadelphia for our amazing Philadelphia Union team. And I believe you're in. If I'm correct, you can correct me. You all if I'm wrong. But your entire courtship was long distance, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So how did you all handle that? Like you're a major league soccer player, so you're on the road. Not only do you not live in the hometown of your girlfriend at this time, but you have this like high-paced career. So how did y'all handle this long distance courtship?
I would say for me, number one, I approached it with open eye as well. God can do the impossible. As my wife alluded to, this is not the way that I imagine dating or courting someone, but also I looked at it as more of a thrill and what the possibility could be. Rather than, sometimes people throw in the towel because they say long distance is a deal breaker or it's too much for them to handle. But if it's of God, it will always work. But at the same time, too, you know, we were talking about this. Technology helps a lot in this day and age to keep people united or to keep people connected. And I think that for me, I dealt with it as it was something that was exciting because I got to look forward to somebody on the other end once the long distance was over. So I always looked at it as it was an ends to a means if I knew I was going to truly pursue this person. So it was just a matter of time. And I think that the thrill and the revelation that God gave me, look at it as a thrill, as in what's on the other side of all of this. And that really helped me as well.
Violet, how about you? How did you handle the stress of his job and the long distance?
Well, I always said that I wanted a journey, but I didn't, I didn't think it was going to be this type of journey. But that's the thing. You don't know how God is going to bring about what you pray about and ask for. So I think I just could have never imagined, like, in a million years that I was going to meet a soccer player, date a soccer player. I didn't watch soccer, so it was a very new world to me. And so I just think the surprise of it all, like Ray said, was exciting. Like we kind of both had to know each other's worlds because our worlds were so different, and so it kept things really interesting. Um, there was never a dull moment. I think we prioritized communicating with each other. We talked every single night. And it really helped us to build like the foundation of how we communicate. of course, it's not perfect because it's, Zoom, it's on the phone, you're not in person. But I think, I don't know, I feel like those beginning conversations were really foundational for us. Um, and yeah, I think it was just a journey. That's how I looked at it.
Now, I know I didn't send y'all this question. Uh, it popped in my head. Being that y'all were doing long distance dating, and a lot of people got into that world probably 2020 with the pandemic of doing Zoom dates. How did that work? What was maybe one of your most creative dates long distance, or did y'all just wait to do like dates in person?
Well, one of the I'm glad you bring that up. And like I said, I'll fast forward a little bit to when we were married, and we got married in November of 2019. Had our honeymoon, and then I went to preseason January and February. So therefore, we were already away. I think that the long distance helped us be able to stand the test of time, knowing that I was going off because we had already been battle tested in our courtship, and then the pandemic hits. So then that leads to another situation where my wife's trying to get to Philadelphia, but there's a state of emergency that occurs with our nation and with the world, and they tell everybody to stand in place. So you got one person here and one person in Indiana and one person in Philadelphia. I think like one of the creative ways was doing a candlelight dinner. We were both having different dinners elsewhere, but it was a date, and getting dressed up, or playing the part as we were on a date and eating and talking. But also at the time we tapped into Netflix, where there's a number of streamlines where you can watch the show at the same time with the person when someone else starts the show. So we did like a date night, where we were dressed up, and then we essentially the Netflix and chill. We just weren't with each other, but that was like one of the most creative, as when I look back on it, as opportunities and things that you remember, early on in our marriage, us being married 5 years now. But like, okay, we definitely had some different unique, examples. And I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, it's called Netflix Party. I think it's what
Yeah.
it was called, and you can both watch the same thing at the same time instead of trying to sync up your your devices. It does it for you automatically. I think it was Jingle Jangle maybe was the movie we
Yeah.
watched. So even now, when I see that movie, it makes me think about that time, even though that time was really difficult. Like Ray said, I'm glad you asked that question because we were able to be creative and find ways to still nurture our relationship despite what was going on in the world. So
That's good. That's very cute. I'm happy y'all were able to take those tools, those technology resources, and make them work for you guys. I remember when those watch parties started kind of happening on the social sites and the streaming sites, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't tap into it because I didn't understand it. I was like, I think somebody was trying to watch a movie one time. I was like, why is my TV changing? Didn't really care for that. Uh, but share with us a little bit the pros and the cons from both of your perspectives of a long distance. I'm going to start it this way: courtship and then marriage, because the first year of your marriage was long distance.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. Well, one thing about us is we wanted to go about courtship right, and we wanted to save ourselves for marriage. So when you're not together, that definitely helps. So I think that was the pro, is that we had to prioritize communication and we didn't have that physical temptation. But then on the flip side, we also didn't have that opportunity to connect in that way, where I think that's still also really important as well, because that can help to build the relationship in different ways. Um, I, I mentioned that we talked a lot. We did a lot of Zoom or FaceTime. Um, but then there would be times where we may want to have a very serious conversation where it felt like FaceTime just wasn't the right platform for it. You want to be in person, you want to be able to sit down and talk and have that conversation. Um, but you think about his schedule with soccer, and sometimes that may not be until a couple weeks from now. So those were some of the challenges that I think, um, at least for me, when it came to long distances. when you really need to have like a serious conversation, or a conversation you feel like will be better in person so that you can have that closeness. That was a challenge. But on the flip side, I think it really did help us to not fall into temptation and stay strong in that area, because we really wanted to honor God with our relationship.
Yeah, and for me in the courtship, I think my wife alluded to it. It was a good measure of to help us permit from doing anything we didn't want to. I don't care how saved you are or how sanctified you are, filled with the Holy Ghost. There's different ways to be tempted by Satan, and I think that it was really good for us in that sense. But also, it also allowed us also to think about one of the pros. Also was to get beyond the surface level, even in the the courtship. Some people know how to say the right things, do the right things to get engaged or get married, but then it allowed me to see a different side of, because I really couldn't do all the things that I needed to do in person. So I really had to dig deeper to really get to know this individual, to vet this person as well. And I would say like some of the cons are too as well. You don't get to spend as much time as you want to in the process. Um, Young brothers, if you're out there listening, intimacy is more than just the physical. Intimacy is the stimulation of conversation. Intimacy is also holding hands, building up into that point. Intimacy is making memories. There's nothing like the real thing. I know we talked about technology quite a bit on here, but there's nothing like the real thing of being next to that person, whether in courtship or whether in marriage. Now, in marriage, one of the best things was again, at least a pro for me. Uh, we had already been battle tested. I knew that I had someone who was going to stand there with me, stand in the gap, and being understanding in it. And because of being separated already previously, we never fathomed that the situation was going to transpire as it did in 2020. I think that we were more prepared than other individuals, in a sense. And looking at it now, I didn't really think about it until you said that. But I think like the situation, it was almost like God was preparing us to have a long lasting marriage. Because if anyone tells you you don't go through things, that's not true, because marriage is honorable in the sight of God. So He tries to disrupt it. And I think like what might have been meant for evil, God meant it for good, as it is a scripture. And I didn't think about it until now. And I said, we were able to get through some things because we were already seasoned kind of in that mode, or per se, even if it's not what we tremendously wanted. Now looking back on it.
Y'all were vets by the time the pandemic came. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're coming to a close here, but want to give you both space to share advice. Violet, to women who are in long distance relationship, maybe in a relationship with somebody that they never thought they would even be in, right? And Ray, your advice to guys on how to keep the spark and how to keep the flame, even in a long distance relationship.
Go first.
Well, just to keep the spark in general, my wife and myself, we have a baby boy, and as you alluded to, we dated, we courted. Dating is different than courting. Dating, you taking somebody out here and there. Courting, you're starting to speed up your pursuit of the person, and then engagement is a different stage, and then marriage is a different stage, and then being married with a kid is a different stage. I say this, that the person that you are when you meet that individual that you are setting out to embark on a journey of love is never the same person um, as you continue to progress during different stages. So to keep the spark, you really have to communicate and understand that your person, your best friend, your significant other is different. So their needs are different and their wants are different and the season is different. So you have to understand also that you have to change the way and you address her. Some of the old things that got her or that keeps her smiling, continue to do those things, but you also have to make adjustments. It's just like a job. When you get a promotion, you're never at the same level as you started off being. Whenever you're in school, and you go to the next grade, the curriculum is different. And in life, we go through these different changes. We'll continue to get older. you have to continue to understand your helpmate, your spouse, in the reverence of God, but also say, what do you need in this season? One thing that I've learned is to keep the spark, is to ask her what she needs in this season, and to be having a listening ear. And like she mentioned, be intentional, fellas. Be intentional. Sometimes women do put out that filler and see if you're listening, but being intentional, but also being respective of the innate nature that you can't keep doing the same thing if you want to keep the fire kindled. After a while, it's like a candle or analogy. When you let something burn long enough, the candle isn't at the same height that it is. So the flame that started us out is not the same flame that's keeping us. You got to relight that flame constantly, and do some different things. So I think that that's the advice as well. But again, if you know that your spouse, that the woman you're pursuing, like certain things, stay consistent in what you're doing, but then continue to add to your repertoire and arsenal of things that you can do for your wife that's pleasing in the sight of God. And I say it that way.
Very good. um, I would say, from like a woman's perspective, I think it's really important to know what you desire and have a relationship with God to be able to, for Him to confirm that the person that you're with, or the person that has came into your life, is from Him. I know that, um, when I before I met Ray, I mentioned earlier that I had a list, and I wanted the person to be God fearing. That was number one. I wanted them to have a love for family, to be ambitious. I wanted to be attracted to them, and I wanted them to be hardworking. And so after I met him, I laid the list out before God, and I said, okay, God, I didn't say I wanted him to live close to me, although I assumed that he would. But even with this list, God, how can you help us work through this with, the long distance? Because kind of like you mentioned earlier, um, there were a lot of logistics that we were trying to figure out that reality just knocked down. So there were a lot of times that I had to lean on God, he had to lean on God. We had to come together and say, we don't understand this season, but your grace is sufficient to get us through it. And so that's what I would encourage people who are in long distance relationships, is that it's just a season. We're together now, as we can see, we're not long distance anymore. And I think that was, no one necessarily talks about that either. That was a transition period as well, from being used to talking with each other on FaceTime, and now we're seeing each other all day, every day. I'm seeing parts of you that I didn't see before because we were just hang up the phone. That's a transition too, but in every season there's grace. And if this is something that God, a relationship that God has truly brought together, his grace will help you get through it. He'll give you wisdom. He'll give you creativity, just like he gave us creativity to work through a challenging season. And it'll be something that you look back on it, you'll see it and make you stronger. It'll make you stronger, your communication stronger, your relationship stronger. Um, so it's really, really important to keep God first and at God the center of the relationship.
For sure. There's that God being the center again, y'all. Being that you just brought it up, and you're right, no one talks about that. Really, really quickly, talk about that transition period from long distance to now together.
I think for me, like my wife alluded, like you get to see a different side of different people, and you're in their bubble again. And even before that, I think that there's always going to be a transition. Even though we were long distance, like I said, if you're doing it right in the sight of God, you shouldn't be shacking, you shouldn't be moving in together. So I think like anyone's going to have an adjustment period if you're doing it the right way. But like she was saying, it was a little bit different because it's the cutesy phase. Like you could always hang up and go back to doing what you're doing on the other end. But now, when you hang up a conversation, you're still in the same room with somebody, and it's like, and I mean that as in terms of we're face to face, and I'm done with the conversation. Now what? Or and I tell people this sometimes. People say that they don't fight, they don't argue. That's false. Now you when you hang up on FaceTime, you can be like, I was upset with her today. I can go back to my room. I ain't gotta worry about it. But now you gotta walk around, go into the refrigerator, next to her, and you're like, man. But now it's again, it's all those little things that we talked about too. If it's of God, it will work too. And then like you still look at the person and say, I still love that person. I'm still upset right now, but I love that person right now. I'm gonna calm down. So now you can't escape those type of things and those natures, and you start to see what a person likes to eat. My wife's kind of a snacker. I was like, "What you eating?" I get to catch her and sneak into her. What you eating? It's some fun to it as well, and the stuff that you didn't know that you wanted to know, and you're like, she's really fun in this sense. Or you get a glimpse of watching somebody from afar while still being so close. That now it's like, you see this person in a different light.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly.
All right.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that is our time. Ray, Violet, I want to appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here on Sunday Morning Praise today.
We want to
Of
thank
course.
you.
Thank you.
We just thank you again for the amazing work that you're doing on this platform and how you just continuing to spread the love and the gospel of God. We just want to say, there's somebody for everybody out there. You just gotta be patient. So, and do it inside of God. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, awesome. All right, folks, we have to go to a quick commercial break, but when we come back on that other side, it's time for prayer, and then we're going right back to the music. You're listening to your favorite church girl, Kayla J, on WURD 900 AM 96.1 FM, WRDradio.com.